Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, Battle Creek. Oh, come on now, we can do better than that. It's been 3 years, back to in person. Aren't we excited? This room is filled. Good morning, Battle Creek. Look, you're gonna need more enthusiasm than that for this message today, all right? My name is Eric Stewart, and I'm grateful to be the board chair of BCU and be part of such a dynamic time in history in Battle Creek. This is just amazing. We haven't been together for, 3 years, and we have a 5-year strategy to share with you today. But, you know, the theme song, I think every economic piece should begin with a theme song. And we chose wisely. It was better than Eye of the Tiger, right? I'm dating myself. But, you know, that song from Top Gun elicits for the staff and board the feeling that we have every time we talk economic development in our board meetings, in the community, and what have you. The tone for economic momentum, energy, and feeling we believe exists in this community. Now, that we've started off on such a high note, it's up to the people after me to come in and match the data with the energy. They should have led the meeting, and oh well. So good luck, guys. But you know what? Being serious for a moment, don't be mistaken. The board and staff are unapologetically serious about this momentum fostering an environment in this community where businesses, large and small, thrive. All people have access to housing and health care that works for them. Next level education and opportunity exists every day in this community. A place where you want to come to eat, work, and play. And finally, a place where all human beings feel a sense of purpose for themselves and their community. You know, I have this saying I use at the board meeting, and if you know me, you've heard it. We need to skate to where the puck is going. This is true for this economic journey today. We must anticipate, react, execute, and sustain. As you take this content today, hopefully this will allow your business, your organization, and your home to anticipate, react, execute, and sustain the momentum it takes for this to be a community that feels like Maverick in that F-14 as he leaves the deck and goes on the trajectory to go towards the fight. That's the feeling we want you to leave with today, and every day you visit, live, eat, and work in this region, and we are serious about what we're doing. So give yourselves a round of applause for showing up today, and let's get to it. So on that note, with a positive trajectory and momentum in mind, I'd like to introduce a key player in achieving those pieces, or I prefer, the Top Gun of economic development in this state. My brother in bow ties, and the president of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, Quentin Messer Jr. Q.
Good morning, good morning. You can do better than that. My goodness, my brother in bow tie, the neckwear game, I'm very appreciative of your leadership. Look, I just want to say, before I begin, we are here and designed for a time such as this. And what I have come to realize, actually, when I was driving over this morning, it dawned on me that the onus on me, I think many of you in this room feel this way, but the onus is on me to make the argument that growth is a net positive thing. It's a necessary thing. And that a lot of what I had presupposed was that was kind of self-evident. It's not necessarily self-evident unless you make the argument. So I am grateful to each and every one of you, and Joe and his team at Battle Creek Unlimited. Give it up for them and everything they do. for affording me this opportunity to, as my pastor says, sometimes you get blooped. I got blooped this morning on the way to Battle Creek. That you have to make the argument. You can't assume that people naturally understand that growth is required, that change is required. Change is uncomfortable sometimes. But anyway, that was lagniappe. I'm from Louisiana. That's a little something extra. It's also the name of your board chair's consultancy, too. See, I worked that in a little bit. See, that's what we do in the bow tie game world. All right, let me begin. So we are, all of us here in this room, Battle Creek, 10 plus million of us on two of the most beautiful peninsulas in the world. We're part of Team Michigan. And we're on a road to sustain championship contention. I'm a big sports fanatic. So everything is sports. And this is a golden week of sports. And so we're going to talk about that. So what is our game plan to make sure that all Michiganders succeed? Because I would argue that people want to be in places where they can feel like they can succeed. However, he, she, they define themselves. Most people just want to be left alone. I'm going to try to get mine. I ain't trying to get yours. Just let me be. And we want to create an environment statewide where we can make that happen. So how do we do that? We do it with great partners in the regional area, local areas, like some of the folks with whom I will have the opportunity and great fortune, our partners in the city of Marshall, Calhoun County, and obviously what Joe and his team do at Battle Creek Unlimited. And so you have to attract, retain, and grow business. If people don't see a way for them to make money or to have opportunities to have stable employment, they're going to take a dim view of your place, no matter how wonderful it is. You have to support and grow talent. That's why, the work of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, the Kellogg Community College, your various school systems are all critically important. We have to develop and attractive places. People want to go places that are beautiful. And I was really, really invigorated driving in. You have to accelerate high-tech innovation. You always have to be pushing to the next frontier. I see our friends over at DINS over there. Put your hands in the air as if you have no concern about the consequences. Denzo team over there. Give Denzo a round of applause. That's why we have to be supportive of the efforts of our friends from the Ford Motor Company. We have to understand that if we're going to have a game plan, it's about making sure we play the game the way the game is called today. We can disagree, we can have arguments about the way the game is called, but the rules are pretty evident of what's required. We have to market the state. I would argue that one of the great endearing traits of Michiganders are the humility. People are very humble here. But I'm a Southerner. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and I will tell you something. Southerners will tell you it ain't bragging if it's true. And we have a lot about which to be proud. And I think that our obligation at MEDC, working with Battle Creek Unlimited and others, is to tell our tremendous story. The story many of you are sacrificing, sponsoring Battle Creek Unlimited, supporting other not-for-profits throughout this region. That's a tremendous story that we are obligated to tell. And then we have to support small businesses. I would say parenthetically, we know no business is small to the owner, to the man, to the woman, that family that is sacrificed in order to make sure it happens. Many of you, if you're a small business owner, have not paid yourself often. You've paid your employees. You've put second and third mortgages on your home. You have sacrificed vacations. And that's the grit that has defined this region and then candidly has defined this state. So what is the economic development landscape in Michigan? You have to understand, in order to win, you have to understand how the competition is defending you, and then what are the opportunities? What we do know is this. We know through the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, Build Back Better, the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, Department of Commerce, Energy, Defense, there's a tremendous amount of dollars that are available, that's in the system, that's motivating capital allocation decisions on the part of companies. $370 billion to accelerate clean energy transition. We in Michigan are duty bound to compete and earn a portion of that investment. I've just talked about the CHIPS Act. That is $100 billion to try to make sure that the semiconductor industry views America as a significant and viable place for profitable fabrication, the manufacturing of all types of chips, whether they are legacy node chips that are used in the auto industry or in medical devices to some of the most advanced chips that are in iPhones, computers, things of that nature. We have to have the entire universe of chips here in the US. I would say another opportunity is the fact that extreme weather is becoming more and more of a thing. There are people who are living in places that will find it increasingly hard to have property insurance. I will tell you parenthetically, I came up here from Michigan, from New Orleans, Louisiana, one of the remarkable places on planet Earth. But I will also tell you that Louisiana is losing a football-sized field of land every 45 minutes. So just think about that. When you go and see your high school stadium, Louisiana is losing that size of land every 45 minutes. Eventually, if things don't change, the Gulf of Mexico will be on the west side of New Orleans, on the West Bank, by 2050. Those of you who may not get down to Louisiana that much, there are about 150,000 people who currently live between the Gulf and the West Bank. Why do I say that? This is not to talk about their misfortune, climate change. It's to suggest our advantages. Things are relatively stable. So I have one request. You can forget anything I say. Please stop complaining about the weather here. Really, it's annoying. I'll be front. It's annoying. Stop it. Because let me tell you why. I moved here. I'm a native Floridian. I moved from Louisiana. I like to think I'm a rational person. I like to think I know what I'm doing. But whenever I come here, the first thing people ask me, how are you adjusting to this weather? Isn't it cold? Isn't it gray? Isn't it this? Stop it. Just stop it. Because what you put in the atmosphere will define what your atmosphere will be. There are people 10, 15 years from now who will relish being in a place that has the stable weather conditions that we have. And we need to celebrate that. And we need to use that as a competitive advantage for companies that are going to make serious capital allocation decisions. We know that one of the challenges is the transition from the internal combustion engine to electric vehicles and other propulsion systems. Right now, electric vehicles are dominating the conversation, but we know there's hydrogen fuel cell technology and there are other technologies. We're not even talking about autonomous vehicles. Let's just focus on driver-led or driver-assisted vehicles. That is a significant task that I think we have to deal with and we're prepared to deal with. 1 out of 5 Michigander has a job directly associated with the industry, the automotive industry. And so we need to think about how to make sure that we are prepared for those men and women who've dedicated years of their lives with the expectation, if they play by the rules, conduct themselves in an integrous way, they would have opportunity. Well, technology disrupts. And so that's why Governor Whitmer, bipartisan members of the legislature, and I was remiss if you are elected official and you're in the audience at the state, local, or county level, thank you. It is not easy. Give it up for your elected officials, because it is not easy to lead and to raise your hand to lead in these times. But unanimously, there's a consensus that we have to make sure that people have opportunities. Second, we know whether it's inflation, higher interest rates, geopolitical tensions, known and unknown, that will change stock markets. It will change capital allocation decisions. So how do you prepare if you don't always know what's going to happen? I will argue we have to continue to support and encourage creative problem solving on the part of our next generation and ourselves. We have to come together as Michiganders, because I'm going to tell you, nobody cares whether or not you are a Spartan or a Wolverine. When you talk to people in Tennessee or Kentucky or Georgia who are competing aggressively for opportunities in the mobility sector, nobody likes sports more than I do. But our rivalries in state must not ever take us away from the unity we have to have on both peninsulas. We need each other. We are all we have, because we're competing not only against 49 other US states, but we're competing against Canadian provinces and Mexican states, as well as countries from all across the globe. We have 3 border crossings with Canada, one of the most active border crossings in North America. And we are an international state, in many ways unique among other states. And so we have to figure out ways to come together. And then I talked about it before, and I'll just state it. I'm getting older. You know, trees don't get older. You ever notice how a tree doesn't get older? It just grows? Well, I'm growing. And I'm shedding the little leaves and branches. But I have 3 children. Well, now a 4th, a son-in-law. So I got 4 children now. And I have to figure out, those of us who are growing, getting older, what's the compelling reason for them to stay in Battle Creek? And not feel like they're making some sort of sacrifice. That they can realize all their economic dreams, hopes, right here. We have everything we need here. The onus is on us, and you've clearly made the commitment by your presence here, by your support of Battle Creek Unlimited, by your support of other civic organizations to make it happen. But we have to make sure that we get younger. No offense to the wisdom of age, but we have to get younger. We have to make sure our next generations stay here. Let me pick up the pace. So I've talked about the EV future being here. This is some of the developments that happen. We have every right to win. You may not win everything, but you got to compete every day. And that's what we aim to do. So let me try to summarize this, and obviously Joe and his team can share these slides if you're interested. But what's the big point of this? If you take away nothing else, a lot of people will say, well, why so fast? Why are people pushing so hard? There are few bites left at the apple. Billions of dollars have already been deployed. If you look at our historic Big 3 as well as our Michigan 4, including Toyota, you can see, just Google, where they're making billions of dollars of decisions. Toyota, Ford, GM, Stellantis. I'm not even talking about the Korean, the other Japanese, and the European automakers. We have to win these opportunities. I said to you, 1 out of 5, 20% of our friends and neighbors have jobs associated with this industry. Denso, one of our leading employers, are competing aggressively to make sure that their technologies will be in the future, whether it's EV and other propulsion systems. And we have to make sure that we have their clients closer to Denso. Because let me tell you something, they gotta go to where their clients are. And it's not sentimentality. They have to make sure they deliver profit for their shareholders. Just the way all of you have to deliver profit for your shareholders, your interested parties, your families, in any manner of business. So, I want to focus on 2 things before I talk about this slide as I begin to cut across the field. It's not by accident. The Governor Whitmer, during her victory address, during her State of the State, focused on 3 industries: mobility, semiconductor, and clean energy. That's not to exclude agribusiness. It's not to exclude consumer packaged goods. It's not to exclude life science. It really is the power of and, but there's a reason why the focus was on those 3 industries. It goes back to what I said earlier. If there's $370 billion going toward the clean energy transition and $100 billion going to semiconductors, when asked Bonnie and Clyde why they robbed banks, what did they say? Because that's where the money is. And so we have to be focused on where the opportunities are during this window, during this time such as this. So that's why there is that critical intentionality. We talked about the massive transition going on with the auto industry. I will talk about semiconductors very briefly. Everything we have, from all the technology here, is powered by these chips. They control everything they do. Essentially, most of what we do. We need to have those opportunities here in the US. In clean energy, we have a tremendous opportunity because of our scenic beauty. Whether it's here in this area or across both peninsulas, we can show the world how you can have profitable, capitalistic job growth and also support and sustain the quality of place that's always made Michigan special. These are some of the industries. Joe and his team do a wonderful job, and in close alignment. We understand that there are certain things that make more sense here, and that's why we don't prescribe what happens from Lansing. We work in partnership. We trust the intelligence, the commitment, the fortitude of Joe and his team, and as I said, it's always and. Parenthetically, I would say, as a Christian, I don't believe in scarcity, because I know that there's a God that's bigger. If he's infinite, there is no scarcity. The concept is antithetical to his being, his identity, and I, as his ambassador, have to go and walk in the authority of the kingdom for which I serve. And I would argue that when we embrace this power of and, there is nothing that we can't do together. We have proven that as a state. Countless of times when people counted Michigan out, what did Michigan do? Respond and be better and bolder. So we have to have a Team Michigan approach to talent. I've talked about that. It has to begin not only prenatal, but it's a lifelong set of learning. We have to meet talent where they are. So we have started the EV Scholars Academy. You have programs like the Battle Creek Promise and other things, investments from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation and others to make sure that young people and those young in spirit have the opportunity to constantly change who they are. And so it has to be an and, not an or. A lot of what you hear and talk in the media about MEDC is SOAR, and people will think all we do are big projects. I would say that's only 10% of what we do. We do placemaking, community development, and we're proud to have supported numerous projects I'm sure Joe and others will talk about here in Battle Creek. We focus on startup investments, focus on small and medium-sized businesses, upskilling, childcare, as well as housing. Here are some of the focus areas. We understand that we have to make it easier, and the blueprint for how companies and how individuals who desire to be entrepreneurs access governmental support, we have to make the playbook more transparent. It's a work in progress, but we work with Battle Creek Unlimited. We work with small business development centers, APEX accelerators, smart zones, to make sure that we have that ecosystem that's a vital part of our game plan for success. So I ran a little bit over, I apologize, but there's so much to say. And I want to just encourage you to support Joe, to support economic developers. Pray a hedge of protection around your elected officials, around your city managers, those who've been called to an authority in a time such as this. Because together, there's nothing we can't do. Because we serve an infinite creator, and we have an infinite amount of creativity. So let the canvas of our imaginations be colored by that. Thank you very much. Let me get in order to a man who needs no introduction, one of the baddest brothers in economic development on this planet, your leader of Battle Creek Unlimited. Give it up for Big Joe Severowski.
Well, thank you, Quentin. We appreciate what you, your team, and the state of Michigan are doing for this state and particularly this region. Good morning, and thank you all for attending this update at this very bright morning. We're glad you're here. We're glad you got woken up with the intro. But I would like to take a moment and thank our many sponsors for making this day possible. This is the largest attended event BCU has had and its largest sponsored event, and we thank you all for helping us champion economic development in Battle Creek. We couldn't do what we do without your support. Speaking of economic development, I'm quite surprised that nobody's been digging through their name tags yet, but each of you have received 2 gift cards, $10 gift cards for establishments in downtown Battle Creek. So they're in the back of your name tag right now. Feel free to dig amongst yourselves and trade with your neighbors, but there's a reason for that. We know the last 3 years have been all over the place in many sectors of the economy, and we feel like we've got some good momentum going on in downtown Battle Creek and particularly in our revitalization efforts. So the most important thing of this is we want you to get out, patronize these establishments, and let's keep the momentum going. I will be brief over the next 20 minutes, highlighting some of our economic development accomplishments over the last year, and then as our 5-year strategic plan comes to an end in the next couple months, we'll give you a summary of what that's like as well. But really, I'm going to be brief because we all came to talk to Quentin, put in our priorities for RAP 2.0, and also hear Dean Barber speak and give us some wisdom on economic development. So, our mission as an organization was to build a strong community by driving strategic investment and job creation. Our commitment was to generate $250 million of capital investment by direct BCU, along with the City of Battle Creek influence, generating the creation of 750 jobs, paying $17 an hour or more. Our vision to do this was engaging the community to meet the opportunities and the challenges of the future. In those sectors were automotive, aviation and defense, food and beverage, warehouse and logistics, and energy storage. Selfish plug here, energy storage, we called that out about 6-7 years ago at Battle Creek Unlimited. We have Camel Energy now in Battle Creek Unlimited, in Battle Creek, and we have Ford over in Marshall, coming to Marshall, so this sector is going to continue to accelerate. I like to start out by talking our numbers. Calhoun County, we have a 5.1% unemployment rate, which traditionally, historically, is above the state average and above the national average. Additionally, and then I'm going to talk about why this is important later on, our labor participation rate, 59.4%, again, traditionally lags behind the state and the national average. Those are key numbers that we have to do. We have to take into account as we're trying to change this ecosystem to support our existing employers and our new employers coming to the area. I'm just going to briefly touch on our strategic plan over this last year, and then we're going to accumulate and go into the 5-year metrics. So as our strategic plan in our last year comes to an end, these are in the investments in the last year. Through our efforts, we've helped generate 145 new jobs in Battle Creek in the last years, paying $17 an hour or higher. Of those 145 jobs, they are made up of these companies. And I'm going to touch on a few of these. New Holland, SJS Electric, Duncan Aviation being one of our largest investments this year, investing nearly $40 million, supported by the BC TIFA, adding some apron at the airport. Camel Energy, CSC Morse working with the city. Zoetis has landed at our spec building out at the out at Exit 92, and Apredia. Now you'll see a couple of those companies, Duncan Aviation and New Holland, they have 2 numbers. Those numbers are additional numbers from what they originally reported. Our community development initiatives, Doubletree Hotel Project, which we've been working on, the Hotel Training Initiative, the River Naturalization Project, the BC Train Program, the Kendall Center, and the Treehouse Property Donation. We're going to touch on all of those. So the Doubletree project, I'm very excited about this project. It has been a long journey. We've talked about the McCamley Hotel ever since I arrived in town, but we've really taken the bull by the horns the last 2 years, and phase 1 of the project is about to be done. That is all the new mechanical systems in the basement, the roofs, the windows, the paint job, and phase 2 is ramping up. Just behind us, behind this wall, phase 2, the atrium will be rebuilt. It'll have a new restaurant space, a new lobby. But what's most important and most exciting about this project is the amount of community support that we were able to leverage. We got support from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, the Miller Foundation, the City of Battle Creek, Calhoun County, Kellogg Company, Bronson Health Community Partners, Consumers Energy, State of Michigan, and the MEDC. Folks, we leveraged over $30 million in direct grant dollars for this project. If that doesn't speak to the magnitude of what this community can come together and do, I don't know what does. Additionally, this is going to be a very unique hotel. What we're trying to do is we're trying to keep the dollars spent as locally as possible, and we're going to use it as a teaching hotel concept. There is a ton of upward mobility in the hospitality industry. So we want to create and work with our workforce partners, our educational partners, K through 12, into the secondary institutions to create certificate programs and training pathways that are industry-wide recognized, so that not only are we spending the dollars locally, we're improving the lives of our residents local. You can go from a housekeeper to management to owning a hotel in the hospitality industry, and we want to expose that to our community. I also want to give a special shout out to United Federal Credit Union. They came in and they took a lead on this, and they participated with the Kellogg Community Credit Union and Blue Ox. They were doing the senior loan position. I want to thank Pioneer Construction and 6 PM Hospitality for helping us usher this through. Not to forget Motor Shop Electric, Schweitzer. We've got a lot of local subcontractors working on the project. So this is truly a community development project at heart. I'd like to touch on the BC Train program. This is a program that we developed in 2020 when we started to seeing people working remotely. This is a program to help for down payment assistance, and it's a partnership with employers so that funds can be used for down payment, lease, moving expenses, moving into the corporate limits of the City of Battle Creek. To date, there have been 16 individuals take advantage of this program, $174,000 awarded, and there's 66 inquiries. We have 4 pending. I will say a majority of these users utilizing this program were from the Kellogg Company moving into our area. The Kellogg Company graciously supported this program as well. The Kendall Center. The Kendall Center, we work with the City of Battle Creek, the Battle Creek Community Foundation, and many others. As Western Michigan University consolidated into their beautiful facility out at the airport, their classroom space, it left a void for the need of the Kendall Center. This was a community-owned asset. Working with Western Michigan University, we took it back via donation, and the value of that donation was over $2 million to Battle Creek Unlimited, and we're holding it for strategic investment and strategic redevelopment. River naturalization. This is probably one of the most exciting projects that I'm going to speak about today. This has been talked about in this community for decades. In partnership with the City of Battle Creek, we were able to secure $13 million of a state appropriation from the state of Michigan. Thank you, Rep. Hodsma, and all the other reps that are here. What I want to tell everybody about this project is this $13 million is not going to naturalize this river. This project allows us to begin the process of the river naturalization project and working more diligently with the Army Corps of Engineers. So these dollars are used for strategic acquisition, strategic demolition, and environmental due diligence and professional services. So this is probably a 5 to 10 year outlook, but we're beginning pretty aggressively. Our first acquisition with those dollars, which wasn't with those dollars, Battle Creek Unlimited took ownership of the Treehouse facility in December of 2022. This is a 418,000 square foot former cereal facility encompassing 18 acres along the Kalamazoo River. This property was donated to Battle Creek Unlimited by New Mill Capital at a value of over $3 million. The importance of that is that preserves our $13 million to keep going. New Mill Capital also owns the former graphic packaging facility, and we are working with them to tear that facility down this year, get it environmentally clean, and then donate the land back to Battle Creek Unlimited for this project. So, between Battle Creek Unlimited, the City of Battle Creek, we're also working with the Semco property and the CSE Morse property. We are going to have nearly 1 million square feet of old industrial square footage controlled along the Kalamazoo River and nearly 50 acres. That's something if you went to Detroit, Grand Rapids, or other large metro, would have taken them 20 years, and we accomplished it in probably about 2 years. So we're going to accelerate this. So over the last year, our capital investment has been nearly $47 million. BCU has received nearly $50 million in direct grant dollars thanks to the state of Michigan and the Kellogg Foundation and others. And I want to mention that about the Kellogg Foundation. They are leaning in heavily in Battle Creek, and they're helping us take on some large tasks, and they're getting comfortable doing some more large tasks. So I don't want to forget them in this conversation. We've also leveraged another $1 million, and we've awarded $250,000, Our strategic plan results of the 5 years. This is coming to an end. So cumulatively, the numbers are in. We were 121% above our goal of creating 750 jobs. We created 906. We don't create those jobs. We create the environment to induce those. We were 117% above our capital investment goal, $293 million. We were 140% above our goal of 20 of new companies attracted. We attracted 21 new companies. That was from small business to large business. 110% above our goal of getting loans out the door for a revolving loan fund to help these community development projects. That's in addition to the $1.6 million that we administered at the onset of COVID. We helped dozens of small businesses. We had dollars out the door the last week of March of 2020 into the first week of April. We were probably the first organization in the state of Michigan, and probably further, to have dollars out the door to give these small businesses a lifeline. We were 100% of our goal of community development projects, and we're 150% of our goal of lead developments. Over the past year, this organization has leveraged $90 million in direct grant assistance to Battle Creek Unlimited. Not all of it's been deployed, but these are projects, these are dollars that are coming into our organization to help support community development and turn the tide. We've leveraged additional nearly $45 million, and we've awarded nearly $10 million over the past 5 years. I want to briefly touch about some ongoing projects that we're working on that you may have heard of. Food Reimagined. What is Food Reimagined? We all know in Battle Creek that we're a food town. We've got the Kellogg Company, we've got Post, we've got a rich history of food and development in our town. We've got the assets, we got the Kellogg Research Institute. Not only the physical assets, we have the institutional knowledge with the folks that are coming out of these companies. So this has been a discussion for many years, but now we have a dedicated staff person. It's called Food Reimagined Initiative to foster and develop emerging food and beverage companies in Battle Creek. This was made possible by financing and grants from the MEDC's Gateway Program, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, the Community Foundation, the City of Battle Creek, and we've got the knowledge and know-how from staff of the Kellogg Company and JPG Resources. Additionally, we've talked about the drone park in Battle Creek for probably 5-6 years. I'm most excited about this because I think we're starting to gain some momentum and move this through. What does this mean? Our industrial park is pretty mature. We have some additional acreage left. But I think our real next big industrial move, job creator, job generator in Battle Creek, is at our airport. And I think we all know that. We've been positioning the Battle Creek Executive Airport since 2017. We've conducted a feasibility study. We've got the best airspace to start this basically in the state of Michigan. We've got the Air National Guard that operates drones. We've got Western Michigan College of Aviation. We've got Duncan Aviation. We've got land. We've got fiber in the ground. We have all these things. So our message to the state of Michigan is we want to start this effort in the state of Michigan, in Battle Creek. And if we start it in Battle Creek and get going, it's going to blossom throughout the state. Some ongoing projects. The Washington Heights Entrepreneurial Fund. This is an initiative that we've administered and partnered with New Level Sports, prioritizing low to middle income Black, Hispanic, and Burmese individuals. Essentially, getting capital into entrepreneurs' hands that wouldn't have otherwise been able to access it. This is an ongoing program. We've got 10 recipients thus far that we've been working with over the last 2 years. Some have gotten full distribution, some have gotten partial distribution. But this is, again, another Kellogg Foundation sponsored initiative. We've learned a lot, we're going to continue to learn a lot, and there's much more to develop in this community on initiatives like this. So this is a shining star of what we've been working on for a while. The VA Medical Center. In March, this was on a list to be basically bracked and eliminated. Battle Creek Unlimited worked with its state, local, federal officials to get it removed from the list. Locally, luckily there was 35 other facilities recommended for closure, and a lot of those communities weren't happy either. But the BRAC initiative was basically eliminated, and the importance of that to Battle Creek is there are 1,100 jobs at the VA Medical Center. It's a huge employer for this area. So we put it out there as ongoing because this won't be the first nor the last attempt at that effort. The 110th entrance in the Marine Corps operations, they're putting in a new gate at Skyline Drive in Hill Brady. This is a $10 million gate. They will be shutting down the entrances on Dickman Road. There will be a roundabout put in, nearly a $2 million roundabout supported by the BC TIFA. The Marine Corps, they're putting in a $76 million new support center in Battle Creek. Why I put these two together and why I mention them, folks don't realize, but Battle Creek Unlimited, we employ lobbyists at the federal level and the state level. And specifically at the federal level, we have a lot of DOD defense in Battle Creek. We employ these folks to not only protect our assets here in Battle Creek, but to help grow them. And we're getting $76 million and another $10 million for the guard gate. But what's important about that is the more that continues to invest, the more those industries will grow in Battle Creek. The Ford Blue Oval project, thanks to our partners in Marshall, thanks to Quentin and his team at the state for making this happen. I'm high on this, but I also know it's creating strain and angst amongst our current employers. So I wanted to call this out. This is a $3.5 billion investment. This could be transformational with the anticipated addition of 2,500 jobs. That site is 10 miles from where we all sit today from Battle Creek. This is going to be a boon for Marshall. It's going to be good for Battle Creek. It's going to be good for the county, and it's going to be good for the region. So that is a project that will be ongoing for several years. Now I want to look back to look forward to tell you where we're going. Battle Creek Unlimited is a 51-year-old organization. It was created in 1972 to oversee the Fort Custer Industrial Park conversion. And as of today, we have 85 companies, 25 are international. It is the largest contiguous industrial park in the state of Michigan, representing 13,600 employees and an annual output of nearly $5 billion on an annual basis. Just in the past 5 years, this organization has helped generate 906 jobs, leveraged nearly $239 million in capital investment just in Battle Creek, and received $90 million in grants. We've leveraged an additional $44.7 million. We've added 600,000 square feet of industrial square footage, and we've been at the ground floor of redeveloping 422,000 square feet of commercial space in downtown Battle Creek. We're nearly secured 900,000 square feet for river redevelopment. So I'm going to brush through these because we're looking back to look forward. So 13 million, 5.9 million for housing. BCU seeks drones. Battle Creek Unlimited awarded 522,000 from the federal government for food startup. I talked about food reimagined. New Holland, I know it wasn't going to happen, but they're open, folks. They're finally open after 5 years. This, again, goes into community development. The Battle Creek Economic Developers earn award for a hotel project. This is a massive undertaking and what it means for our community. Again, Ford landing in the region. New hires, we got Heather Ignash, who's an economic development specialist. Gabriela Perez Hernandez is our director of Food Reimagined. Chris Martin is an urban planner, and Aaron Gibson is our facilities coordinator. 2 of those positions are new positions to the organization. Again, we're looking back to look forward. I want to keep everybody there. But I want to pause at this moment. The last 5 years have been very fruitful for BCU. The last 3 years has been actually crazy, from administering $1.6 million during the emergency loan situation for COVID, to multiple legal battles. Thanks for our legal team over here with the hotel. That was fun. And raising nearly $100 million in direct grants, to seeing redevelopment of hundreds of thousands of square feet. We have taken on some crazy challenges, and I would like to recognize the staff at BCU for their hard work and dedication, specifically putting this event on today. So if you're BCU staff, could you please stand to be recognized? Thank you. Additionally, we have a pretty good board at BCU. They have bought in some wild ideas and have given me and the team leeway to run with it. I remember sitting with Eric and John in various rooms saying, you know, we could redevelop this hotel for 12 to 15. Then COVID hit, then inflation, then supply chains, you know, I have a lost count, but 70, 80 million later, it's still going forward, and we're going to get it done. Or when we should just go ahead and take a donation of a 400,000 square foot cereal facility that says, trust me, it'll be worth it. Or take ownership of every empty downtown building that comes our way. But it's starting to pay off. So if you're a BCU board member, could you please stand and be recognized? Thank you. Community challenges. This actually deserved 2 slides, but we're looking back to look forward. We've accomplished some great things, but we've got a lack of housing at all levels. We've got rising wages. We've got staffing constraints. We've got hiring, retention, and turnover, transportation. We've got childcare. I'm going to touch on the 2 points later, but I want to stop at childcare. Over the past year, we've been proud to partner with Pulse, and the Upjohn Institute as they coordinate efforts to create comprehensive solutions to child care for the MEDC's Region 8. Staff at BCU has dedicated time and resources engaging with Pulse and our local partners and companies. Duncan Aviation, Magna, Next Thermal, and Bronson Healthcare have been at the table. Why is that important? Because we got to look at economic development differently. There are different inputs into economic development that are going to move the needle, and childcare is one of those. The last piece I want to touch on, which really is opportunity. It shouldn't be in the community challenges bucket, but it should be in the opportunity bucket. We need to leverage these regional projects, such as Ford. We know Ford's going to bring all of this opportunity, but if we're not at the table developing our community in a proper way to help capture as much of that economic development in Battle Creek and the surrounding area, then what are we doing? Kellogg has announced a spin. They're going to run dual campuses, both in Battle Creek and Chicago. I'm a guy half glass full on this one. There's going to be a lot of additional business travel back and forth between Chicago and Battle Creek. And heck, we even own a hotel, so I hope you fill it up. And we can use that revenue to continue to reinvest in our community. But we should leverage this opportunity. Dual campuses, we should strive to make the best community that we have so that when young talent in Chicago starts to age and they want to stay with the Kellogg company, the Battle Creek campus should be the next logical choice rather than leave the company. So I'm high on that, and that's what should drive our strategic plan moving forward. All right, our strategic plan going forward, as you might have all guessed, is community development based. We're looking back to look forward. We have a massive industrial park. We have plenty of employment opportunities. We have plenty of new employment opportunities, but we are going to be focusing 60% of our efforts, resources, and staff time on community development, which means housing, downtown vibrancy, placemaking. These things are the inputs that I believe will help with our existing employers and our future employers in the community, help with that turnover rate. We need to grow our population in Battle Creek. We are not giving up on our industrial focus. We're just going to be a little bit more laser focused. We're going to focus on the airport and the drone sector, food and beverage, and energy. But between the industrial side and community development side, we're doing this for our existing employers. I know, and we are thankful for you, but we want to make sure that Ford is successful in this region. We want to make sure you're taken care of as well, and that's why we're making that shift. Our goal will be $500 million, $200 million dedicated to industrial, and $300 million to community development. And those numbers are probably really light, but that'll be our effort going forward. And just a reminder, this organization has redeveloped or been in the process of redeveloping 422,000 square feet, got 255,000 square feet in the works or in consideration. If we added another 150 to 200,000 square feet in downtown on that, we'd be cooking with gas. We've nearly secured $1 million on the river and 50 acres on the river as well. Fun fact, the majority of this is Ford, which we're thankful for. But as we sit in this arena today, between the last year and the 3-4 years going forward, there is $4.7 billion of pure construction work that has taken place or is going to take place within a 10-mile radius. And that's just the large stuff that we know about. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. He was a little anticlimactic there at the end, but as you can tell, there's a lot of good things going on here in Battle Creek. And so again, let's give another round of applause to Joe and the BCU team. We'd now like to bring Dean Barber to the stage. Dean Barber is a site selection consultant and economic development expert. He's going to be doing some pieces about Battle Creek, but we've spent the week so far going around talking to a number of companies and community stakeholders and partners, and he's been learning about Battle Creek and what we're doing well and where some of our challenges might be. So he's going to share his thoughts with us this morning, and I'd like to bring Dean on up to the stage now. Dean?
My name's Dean Barber, and as the late, great Minnie Pearl would say, I'm just proud to be here. Some of you probably don't know who Minnie Pearl was, but I live in Texas, a most humble place. Texans are like the Israeli people. They believe they're God chosen. And they're not humble. There's a little bit of that. Texas was an independent country for 10 years, the Republic of Texas. And that's still in their DNA, which is why I'm going to Mexico soon. My job as a consultant, well, let me just say this. I'm not so proud to be a consultant. I think my career has been on a 40-year downward spiral. Journalism, economic development, consulting, the next logical place is a penitentiary. It's just not good. I like to think of myself as a community whisperer. My strength as a consultant is not what I know, but what I find out. And I like to go to communities and ask questions. And that's what I've been doing all week, asking questions of community stakeholders. And I've learned a lot. I'll be writing my views about Battle Creek soon in a special edition of my newsletter. But I can tell you, and I've thought about this, that my favorite cities, and I do work all over the country, but I've concluded that my favorite cities are in the Midwest. They are places that had great wealth built up in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And then they've declined in successive decades because of big forces that they often cannot control. But now I see these communities clawing back, and I'm seeing very creative economic development. I saw it in Dayton, Ohio last fall. I'm seeing it here. I was wowed when I learned that BCU is essentially a real estate developer. I've never seen that before to such an extent that I see it here. And the reason? If we don't do it, no one else will. So BCU, which got its start to develop industrial properties on the outskirts of town, is now investing in your downtown. Now, why is that important? I'll tell you why it's important. Because that plant might be built in the industrial park in the outskirts of town, but they will always, always look at the downtown. That's the core of the apple. And companies want to be in places where the downtown is, quite frankly, not dead. And I'm seeing signs of actually very healthy life. I was wowed by going into the Milton. Incredible. What you're doing at the hotel, I know it's going to be a good bet. And I'm seeing entrepreneurial development downtown. So I'm actually bullish on your community. Okay, that's out of the way. Now I'm going to talk about two things. Two things that affect us all. And the first one is a weakness of this community, but it's a weakness of so many communities. Where you live affects nearly everything in your life. Where you work, how you spend your time off, who your friends and neighbors are, how many kids you have, when and even how often you get sick. Most people's most valuable asset by far is their home. And housing is so important for the overall economy because it determines the location and supply of the most important resource of all, people. Here's a generalized scenario. A young urban couple currently rents and struggles to save enough money to buy a first home. When they finally do, they buy further out in the suburbs or the exurbs, and they spend more than they had planned. They delay having children, and they, all because of income and space constraints, as well as their age. They're holding off having children. They no longer, they have a longer commute. They can no longer walk everywhere and have less free time. Even those that are happy to rent forever are impacted, as those who want to buy a home can't, and put up more upward pressure on demands for rentals, driving rents up as well. A few weeks ago, an experienced economic developer who I know posted on LinkedIn that he was a casual observer of the residential market. Oh, you're going to have to forgive me. I'm going to go through this kind of, but here's what I talked about. It's so true. This economic developer said he was a casual observer of the housing market. Well, let me tell you, housing is the preeminent economic development issue today, by far. Everyone has a difference of opinion about what affordable housing should mean. People, by and large, have a choice about where they work and where they live. That can be a threat to community competitiveness because employers want to be where the talent is, where there's a pool of human resources in terms of quantity, the size of the labor pool, and quality, what they know, their talents. If the talent can't live in a community for lack of housing stock or for reasons of affordability, affordability is the issue in Dallas. I bought a duplex 5 years ago in Dallas for $275,000. I sold it last spring for $708,000. Affordability used to be a California problem. It's a big city problem in Dallas and Austin and big city. Here's where you have an advantage. It's not the affordability issue of rentals and houses. It's gone up, but it's not as bad as other parts of the country. So you have an advantage there. What your problem is you don't have a housing stock. You don't have enough. And that should scare and frankly inhibit economic growth. That should scare Joe. It should scare employers because of that lack of housing. Population growth and economic development growth go hand in hand. You cannot separate them. Places that are losing population, and this city has lost population for decades. Now you're not. You've staunched the bleeding. Now you're not losing population, it's stabilized. But places that lose population will not have economic development growth. If I have to look at one number, it's going to be, what has the population been in this community over decades? I've done economic development consulting in Greenville, Mississippi, which was 60,000, the poorest part of the country, the Mississippi Delta. Greenville had a population of 60,000 back in the 1960s. Now it's down to 30,000. And they have one manufacturer. And they wonder why. So everyone agrees about this housing shortage, but the backdrop is that builders got seriously spooked by the recession. A lot of foreclosures, and the reality today is that it's not easy for them today with the cost of materials, the inflation on materials, and now higher interest rates. So it's a tough. There's a shortage, but there's a tough environment for builders. Thankfully, we're not seeing a lot of foreclosures. We've seen a slight uptick, but not much. One remedy, well, what you're starting to see around the country is state and local governments trying to alleviate their housing crisis by allowing denser development in areas dominated by single-family homes. One remedy most often discussed nationwide is changing zoning rules. That has sparked a great backlash among some homeowners who feel that the changes would deflate their property values, increase stress on infrastructure, increase traffic in their neighborhoods. But I'm telling you, I went into the tower of the 16th floor of your hotel, and I'm looking out over your community, over your city, and you're not dense. You have so much space where you should be building apartment complexes. I know that will be resistant to some single-family homeowners, but that's the only way you're going to increase density, increase your population, increase opportunity, increase employers coming here. It's the only way. Low-density neighborhoods are zoned so that only single-family homes can be built there. There's almost an inherent discriminatory factor when you do that. But housing advocates, economic development consultants like me, advocate pushing local governments to loosen their rules and allow multiple types of housing. Arlington, Virginia has been mired in a fierce debate over proposals to allow more missing middle housing, buildings like duplexes that aren't single-family homes, but nor are they large apartment complexes. The county board recently decided to allow more construction despite loud opposition from some homeowners. Washington State has passed a bill that would allow cities to allow denser housing on lots that are currently designated for single-family use. But zoning reform alone, particularly when that reform is modest, isn't going to solve this community's or any community's lack of affordable housing, especially in this cost of construction. This is a problem that cannot be ignored. Again, I've talked about population growth enlarges the labor force and therefore increases economic development. A growing population provides a larger domestic market for the economy. Moreover, population growth encourages competition, which induces technological advancement and innovations. You cannot have a flat population for decades and expect economic growth. Quite the opposite. Housing can reverse the trend. Build it and they will come. I live in Dallas. It leads the nation in apartment development. I live in North Dallas, which is kind of upper middle class. I live in an apartment. Right now in Dallas, about more than 35,000 units are slated to be completed in 2023. Yet the vast majority And we have a vacancy rate of 6.5%. So it's pretty, people are moving to Dallas because there's housing available and there's jobs available. They're linked. Let me show you this slide. Yeah, 74,000 new apartments were in the works at the end of March. Now, granted, the Metroplex is nearly 8 million people. It's not comparable to a city of 50,000. But the point is they're aggressive and people are moving there because the housing is being built. That's the point. I do believe, and we talked about this over dinner, that you're going to have to incentivize. You don't have to incentivize housing in Dallas. It's market driven. But you're going to have to start doing that here. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, tax abatements or grants. I do believe we discussed how you could take some of the upfront costs and put them at the tail end so that a developer would pay after an apartment complex is completed. But you're going to have to find ways to incentivize builders to come here and build, or you're not going to have economic development growth for the long term. It's linked to population. Okay, the next big subject I want to talk about, and this is going to affect us all, is generative artificial intelligence. What is that? This is, believe it or not, this has just broke in a big way in the past 6 months. This is new and it's huge, and it's going to affect virtually all of us who work in an office environment. What is it? It's algorithms that are used to create content, audio, code, images, text, simulations, videos. It can and will change the world. It ranks up there with the printing press, believe it or not. Creativity has always been a critical prerequisite to innovation and competitiveness. The creator economy is currently valued at about $14 billion a year. Until recently, the business of creativity has always been uniquely human. However, with the arrival of generative AI, such as ChatGPT, which just broke on the scene in November, all this is about to change. Generative AI could be the biggest change in the cost structure of the information production since the creation of the printing press in 1439. Google and Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai said every product of every company will be impacted by the quick development of artificial intelligence, warning the society needs to be prepared for the technologies like the ones it's already launched. When the printing press came out in 1439, it took about 400 years for it to find its way around the world and be adopted around the world. ChatGPT launched in November 30th of last year, and it is, for that company, OpenAI's valuation is now estimated at $29 billion. This is being widely used in the private sector already. I can't give you precise numbers, but let me tell you what it can do. It can write human-like text and code. It can, well, I'm not going to read this, but it can do a lot of things that heretofore people have done, and it's going to affect my wife, my former wife, said I should be using it for my newsletter. I haven't done that yet, but I'm putting about 20 hours a week in my newsletter. And I haven't started doing it, if I experiment and learn how to use it, and that it's about proper prompts. Today, there's people out on the market, on the job market, that are describing themselves as prompt engineers, not writers anymore. They're prompt engineers, so that you learn how to prompt this thing by asking the right questions, and it will generate text. Conceivably, I could have, if I spent the time and learned how to use it, I could have done this presentation with ChatGPT. But there's still a lot of kinks. There's still a lot of problems with it. It still can be prone to making mistakes. But we need to prepare for the future. Prepare for the disruption. We need to, this creativity business in the future will be a function of human-machine collaborations. And not just for your job, we're in the early stages of a revolution. And generative AI will enable knowledge and skills to transmit more easily across teams and businesses, units, accelerating learning and innovation. So be prepared to invest time and effort to master it. I haven't yet, but I'm going to, as AI will become a partner in intellectual endeavors. Knowledge workers will need to learn how to best prompt the machine with instructions to perform the work. So I urge you to get started today, experiment with it. It will become a prerequisite skill for creative workers in the decades to come. Well, that's interesting. I got different color font, color print. For centuries, new waves of automation have been greeted by predictions of widespread job loss. But for centuries, those predictions have been wrong. Could artificial intelligence be different? The weight of history says no. The revolutionary character of ChatGPT begs us to reconsider. AI has been seeping into our lives, whether we know it or not, for years now, such as completing our sentences and emails and web searches. But generative AI, ChatGPT, is like going from dynamic cruise control to full self-serving driving car. It can answer questions in ways we thought were exclusive preserve of humans more quickly and cheaply. Goldman Sachs just came out with a report and said that 2/3 of jobs could be automated, at least to some degree, in the near future. In the US, of those occupations which are exposed, most have a significant but partial share of the workload. 25 to 50% can be replaced. I'm not saying 25 or 50% of jobs are being replaced. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that some of your duties, some of your job duties can be replaced by this technology. And around the world, as many as 300 million jobs could be affected. I'm not saying loss. Historically, technological progress doesn't mean that jobs become redundant. It creates new ones. So the use of AI could boost labor productivity and boost global GDP by as much as 7%, according to this recent Goldman Sachs report. Certain jobs will be office jobs rather than labor jobs will be most affected. Physical science, social sciences, accounting, law, all sorts of. I want you, this can be scary. The new generative AI has its flaws, notably its proclivity to make things up, get things wrong. But proponents insist these are teething defects in a nascent technology and fixable. That doesn't mean AI isn't a useful research tool. Carefully checking facts and rewriting with a human twist. AI will not replace us, but it'll make us more efficient content producers. Experts and journalists have repeatedly reminded the public that artificial intelligence chatbots are not conscious. They are not sentient. They are not self-aware. But they can seem eerily human. And that's only because they've learned how to sound like us from huge amounts of text on the internet. Everything from food blogs to old Facebook posts to Wikipedia entries. They're really very good mimics, but ones without feelings. But industry leaders agree that that's the assessment for now. These are machines that don't have feelings, can't. But the similarities between chatbots and the human brain are already quite disturbing. That's a central takeaway from a New York Times technology columnist, Kevin Roos' recent 2-hour chat with an artificial intelligence software being built into Bing, the Microsoft search engine. Over the course of this discussion, the chat box announced that its name was Sydney and that it was in love with Kevin and that it might want to engineer a deadly virus. To be clear, Microsoft's chat box can't actually engineer a biological virus. But Roos pronounced himself frightened by AI. He wrote, "I'm not exaggerating when I say my 2-hour conversation with Sydney was the strangest experience I've ever had with a piece of technology. It unsettled me so deeply that I had trouble sleeping afterwards. I no longer believe that the biggest problem with these AI models is their propensity for factual errors. Instead, I worry that the technology will learn how to influence human users, sometimes persuading them to act in destructive and harmful ways, and perhaps eventually grow capable of carrying out its own dangerous acts." Sam Altman, the guy who created this, he wanted to forge a new world order in which the machines would free people to pursue more creative work. And the concept of, he actually advocates the concept of universal basic income, a concept of a cash stipend for everyone, no strings attached. And he believes that jobs will be complemented by this AI and take a lot of pressure off of us. He thinks that it could be eventually an extension of your will, and that's where things get dicey, because some may use AI for nefarious purposes. What makes us human? The 4 main qualities are curiosity, empathy, creativity, and self-awareness. Some people dismiss ChatGPT because it makes errors, doesn't have a sense of humor. But then you can probably say the same thing for people. The truth is the machines are getting smarter. Last month, More than 1,000 technology leaders and researchers, including Elon Musk and Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, signed an open letter urging pause in the development of the most powerful artificial intelligence systems, warning that AI could present, quote, profound risks to society and humanity. AI developers are, quote, locked in an out-of-control race to develop and deploy even more powerful digital minds, and no one, not even their creators, can understand, predict, or reliably control. That's what they said in their letter. These are technology leaders. As I mentioned, Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, was part of that. Andrew Yang, entrepreneur and 2020 presidential candidate. Rachel Bronson, president of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, which sets the doomsday clock. These things are shaping our world. And we have to perfect the storm of corporate irresponsibility, widespread adoption, lack of regulation, and a number of unknowns. So my message, I didn't create an end. I was up at 3 o'clock this morning working on this. I didn't create an end slide. But the message is we've got a technology that we're adopting rather quickly. It's going to affect all companies, all industry groups, virtually all companies, virtually all industry groups. 300 million, it's going to affect us. We're going to be using it, but we don't quite understand it. And that's where we need to be slow on this. So housing and artificial intelligence, these are two big subjects that I want you to understand that affect all of our lives. Thank you again for inviting me. I'm very bullish on the future of Battle Creek. I think you have a very professional, very activist BCU. I applaud the staff. They're sharp. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dean. I'm suddenly now very concerned for my job. With everything that BCU has going on, I fear that Joe may be looking to turn my job into a chat GPT position, so I hope I still am here next year. So we'd like to bring up our panel now, and I'm gonna kind of scooch over here. I'm gonna let Quentin moderate this, but we're gonna have just a few moments for the panel discussion. We have one change. Derek Perry is gonna be subbing in for Jim Durian, the head of the Marshall Area Economic Development Alliance. Derek is the city manager for the city of Marshall and is able to do that. So we're gonna just, go ahead, Joe. We're going to go jump right into the Q&A?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to jump right into the audience Q&A because we think there's going to be a lot of questions. So panel, your mics work. And then I think, who's got the mics in the audience? Heather's in the back, if you can see Heather over there. And Bridget's also in the back. So if you have a question, go ahead, raise your hand. But why don't we kick it off? I'll turn it over to Quentin. One of the big things we've heard about is housing. Can you talk about some of the things that are being done, with all the new jobs coming in from Ford? Maybe we can just kick that off, and then we'll open it up to the next couple of questions.
Yeah, good morning again. I'll be very brief because I already spoke. I think there are two things that I want to make sure that the audience is aware of. There's a statewide housing plan that's put forth by MSHDA, the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. We at MDDC work very closely with MSHDA, trying to address the missing middle. I think that we will have to continue to work with Battle Creek Unlimited and others but I'm optimistic, and I encourage you to Google Michigan statewide housing plan. It is on the web and it's by MISHA. And I'll turn it over to others. I don't want to monopolize.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. So the leadership of Marshall, long before my arrival, recognized the need for housing in Marshall. We have some beautiful historical homes, but that's not for everyone. And one incentive that was utilized by our leadership was the creation of a neighborhood improvement authority, which acts like a TIFA. So developers were saying, you know, well, traditional development, they would come in, they would put in the streets, the water infrastructure, the sewer infrastructure, and then they roll that into the price of the lot. Well, that really was I guess, restriction for a lot of the developers, at least at that time for the city of Marshall. So the creation of the Neighborhood Improvement Authority allows a TIFA to be created, which, again, what that means is those tax dollars that are created because of the development, they stay within that area. It's very similar to a downtown development authority. And that taxing authority allows then the city to partner with the developer, put in those utilities, because those public infrastructure utilities, and then the developer does not have to worry about those costs up front. Now, we have to have a development agreement with them that allows for those TIFA dollars then to back pay the city and those that are holding the cost of that. But that has been, I guess, a mixed results with us at this point. Not really sure ultimately how that'll work out for us. We have some developers that are interested with that. And most importantly, with the coming of Ford to our community, that has really spurred a lot of requests for developers, not only regionally, but outside of the state, looking to do some projects. So our hope is between both of those developments and projects that we will start to increase housing in the city of Marshall.
What you have here is a dearth of home builders. You don't have them, or you have a few and they're aging, they're older men. What you need, so you're going to have to import you're going to have to garner interest outside the community for home builders and apartment builders. I do believe you're going to have to incentivize to some degree, but they're not here. The commercial developers and the residential developers are not in Battle Creek. And it's now that might be in Neighbor, that might be in Grand Rapids or Kalamazoo, but they're not here. And so you're going to have to get creative.
We have a question in the audience in the back.
Yes. First of all, thank you for hosting the event. Enjoyed everyone's discussion and speech. My question is for Quentin, and it has to do with the major European and Japanese OEMs and why Michigan has been, I guess, less successful in landing a major investment. Just if you could comment on that, please.
Well, I mean, I think the short answer is, you know, the game isn't over yet. I think to this point, we haven't, but I think we're optimistic we're going to break through. I do think that some of it has been a function of decisions about where people felt they could deploy capital. I think that we have done an aggressive job of saying that Michigan has, as it always has been welcomed with capital from all across the world. And I think now with this accelerated transition from ICE to EV, you're seeing a reconfiguration. You're seeing all types of joint ventures. You're seeing companies that heretofore were not always as actively engaged in an automotive sector now re-entering. So I'm optimistic that we're going to break through with both Asian as well as European OEMs. Stay tuned. Sure.
You've got a deep bench in terms of talent, manufacturing talent, strongest than any place in the country, the Midwest, the upper Midwest. The Great Lakes region has the strongest talent bench for manufacturing than any other part of the country. So why are they going to the Southeast? Well, they're going to the Southeast for reasons of operating costs, for lower taxes, lower wages, somewhat less regulation, and these southern states are very, very aggressive with incentive packages. Now, Michigan has learned from that. Michigan stepped up with the Ford cattle project. It's $1 billion plus incentive package. That's not outlays. That's not all outlays. It's a mixture of tax abatements and installation of utilities and stuff. But the point is, Michigan is now in the game because it's seen what South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama have done. So Michigan is now in the game. And I think other Midwest states too. But your strength is you have the talent base far greater than those southern states. You beat them on talent.
Kelly, I know another issue has been the rollout of expanded broadband. Can you talk to that, what's going on here in Calhoun County?
Thank you for that question. I think two of the themes that we heard today are, one, economic development is much broader than just tax incentives, right? It has to do with a lot of things that Joe mentioned on his slides and Quentin mentioned on his slides, placemaking, supporting small businesses with a place and so that the people want to live here. And one of the major infrastructure needs that goes into economic development is connectivity. And the county has been trying really hard to position our local community to be able to secure the billions of federal dollars that are becoming available to expand internet services to our residents. We have a task force that the county is staffing and facilitating with about 15 volunteer members of the community, many of whom are here today, so thank you for helping with that. We have commissioned 2 different surveys to make sure, and we've challenged the FCC maps so that we have really good data now about who has internet coverage, what are the speeds, what options do you have, and what also we've been in some really productive conversations with the local private sector, the internet service providers, Comcast and others, to understand what their plans are. So 2 of them submitted some pretty substantial grant requests for the first round of funding that has been made available through the federal government this year. We're supposed to hear the results of that grant by Memorial Day. And then the really big $1.8 billion coming to Michigan that the state will have to determine the grant process for will happen about a year from now. So we think that we're in a pretty good position ahead of a lot of other counties just with understanding the data, knowing where the gaps are, and having that relationship with our local providers to make that happen. So we're very excited about the possibility.
And that really would be not just Battle Creek, Marshall and Albion, but the whole county, so some of the southern parts, the more rural areas, correct?
Absolutely. We've heard from farmers. Internet is needed for healthcare, for education, for everyone. And the biggest gaps are in the rural areas. But there's also affordability issues even within the urban areas and a lack of competition. So a lot of our residents, even in the cities, only have one option for internet. So we're hoping that there will be more competition to potentially lower the costs and ensure the speeds are as high as what we need.
That's great news. All right, other questions from the audience?
Good morning, Mike Corrigan from the Uptown Institute. I just wanted to say something a little bit more hopeful in terms of companies locating here in Michigan, here in Battle Creek. Yes, it's true that if you have a lower wage, a company might be tempted to go elsewhere. But I think a huge difference is you can pay a higher wage with more productive workers working in advanced manufacturing. In other words, it's not just wage as a single dimension, but it's the package of what kind of manufacturing we have here in Southwest Michigan that's going to make a huge difference. An EV plant with advanced manufacturing can sustain a much higher standard of living and pay higher wages, but effectively compete with firms that may choose to locate elsewhere. So wage, I think, is just one dimension. I think we need to look at, which is the community development thing that Joe was talking about. What is the total package of economic development they're offering, including the kinds of high-skilled jobs that we need to train for?
Robert, let me take that one. I would agree with that, and I think specifically this community, just because that's what I'm most knowledgeable of. I think at the local level and at the state level, not just this state and not just this locality, we need to get more comfortable in the Midwest with investments that don't necessarily come with jobs. We want higher wage jobs, and we need to get comfortable with less jobs. And I know I might get crucified for saying that, but if a company can plop down $100 million in its automation, those folks that are working those automation lines are going to make a heck of a lot more money. And as we're experiencing these labor tightening situations, that's something that we have to get comfortable with, that not every investment is going to come with a job.
No, it's a good point. Thank you. Other questions from the audience?
Can I add just one more point? I apologize, but what you just said was brilliant, because if you look at the projections that come out of the state projections, average monthly payroll change in the state of Michigan is going to go from approximately $6,000 a month during the last decade to about $3,000 a month over the next 10 years. So automation is going to be a critical part of managing what I expect to be long-term labor shortages in the state of Michigan.
It's a good point. Other questions? I think Mike Way's got one up here. Heather in the middle. Mike, would you raise your hand higher? There you go. Bridget's got the mic coming to you.
I've got one here if you want to take it while you're traveling.
Yep.
Fred Shipkagel, I'm just in the back here. Sorry, if you want to look at where the mic is. It seems ultimately market forces will solve the housing supply crisis. And I'm just curious, you're shaking your head. Yeah, good. Comment on this, please. I mean, it seems like if there's opportunity, if you have willing and able buyers of homes, that the builders would flood in to provide that ultimately. Maybe there's so much demand across the country that, you know, we're a secondary market, but ultimately it would get here. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Yeah, no, it's not here.
Could you
Not
please be
here.
nicer?
Maybe Dallas, but not here. You're going to have to juice it. You're going to have to, no, not market forces alone. I mean, look, Ford is going to be bringing thousands of jobs. Maybe that'll prompt a developer to build an apartment complex or build a subdivision here, but it hasn't to date. So I think the system has to be juiced. And we've got a nationwide, this is a nationwide problem with big cities, with rural America, small towns. This is not just here. Half of millennials don't even believe they'll ever be able to afford a home. They believe that they are relegated to rentals the rest of their lives. There is a role for government. If you leave it just to the market forces, you're hurting people. You're limiting opportunities for people. You're limiting this community.
Yep, I think, Mike, do you have a mic?
Yes.
Okay.
This question is primarily for Dean, but others could answer it. Greenville, South Carolina is a community that's been very successful over the last probably 30, 40, 50 years of unleashing a natural resource to really drive economic development. And Dean, I don't know if you're familiar with that community, but communities like Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, others in Southwest Michigan are similar in terms of size and the dire straits the communities might have been in the 70s with pollution and highway construction and bypasses and things like that. Do you see any opportunities for us to emulate and build on all the good work that's going on here, but also adopt some of the things that Greenville has been able to do?
Well, they are different communities, and Southern, as Quentin knows, Southern culture is different from Midwest culture. It is. The laws are different. South Carolina prides itself. The economic developers will tell you that they are the least unionized state in the country. I don't know if that's true, but it's probably close to being true. So they pride themselves in being anti-union. That resonates with some manufacturers, maybe not all. They have, generally speaking, property taxes are lower in the Southeast. South Carolina has been very aggressive, as its neighbors has been, North Carolina and Georgia. I think economic developers economic developers are like craft brewers. They share information. So I would encourage BCU to meet and talk with their southern counterparts, exchange ideas. They can learn something from you. They can learn about the investments that I'm seeing from BCU in community development in downtown. That's not being done in the South, hardly. So I like cross-pollination. I like to see economic developers from different parts of the country talk to each other. They can learn from each other. And yeah, you can probably adopt some of that SEC, some of the things, but you're not South Carolina. You're Southwest Michigan. You have a lot to offer. But always look for new ideas. Generally speaking, I find that economic development organizations in the Southeast might be more aggressive in handing out incentives, but they're not more creative. They're more creative in the Midwest. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Can I just say something? I mean, I think what is the one thing, and I say this as a son of the South, I do think Southerners have a narrative ability to shape their self-perfection. So I'm holding in my hot little hands a report by the Site Selection Group, third-party group. Michigan's individual tax rank is 12th. South Carolina's is 28th. One is best, 50th is worse. The property tax rank for Michigan is 25th, South Carolina is 35th. So I think a lot of how we perceive is disconnected from the fact base. And I think until people, look, that's not to say there are not challenges, it's perception lags reality, but perception becomes reality until you forcefully align with the facts, change the narrative. And I mean, I can freely share this with Joe and anyone here, but this narrative that the sky is falling, like I said, stop talking about the weather, stop complaining. Let's get on with doing what we've always done, which is move the world forward, feed the world, and transform our communities. And you in this room are a big part of why I'm optimistic that we're going to get it done.
It's an excellent point. Thank you, Quentin. Other questions from the audience? We've got, Bridget's got the mic coming over to you, Jill. We've got time for one more question. Okay, Jill, we'll make that the last one then.
Oh gosh, thanks.
No pressure.
BCU covers industry and development and attraction of corporate growth. But what is the role of art and culture and sports development in our community? Is this, like this right now is all kind of grassroots? Do you see placemaking and the development of a pipeline for artists and creatives as a tool or a parallel development movement? Should it stay grassroots, or should it be developed into an infrastructure to ensure collaboration and sustainability?
I'll try to answer that both ways. I think it's both and. I can tell you at BCU and the community development stuff that we've talked about, this community is playing catch up. We're missing some physical assets, some physical amenities. So while the grassroots piece is moving along, which we fully support, I think it could become a little more sustained and official as these two pieces start to meet. Hope that answers your question.
Does anybody else on the panel want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, the one thing I would say just briefly, I mean, within MEDC, we have Travel Michigan, which is the Pure Michigan campaign. We also have the Arts and Cultural Council. So we understand that it's holistic, and it's community and economic development, and people are not, disembodied. Well, I only want to work here, but I have no interest in life partners and future generations and recreating. We understand it all comes together. I will acknowledge we have to do better, but I would think that's not isolated to Michigan. It's a human condition, and I think that it's a vital role. But I will say this, part of the creative process and the reason why we love creatives is it's very difficult to harness creative people into policymaking. And so I think we have to kind of understand and meet people where they are, and that's the onus on me and our teammates at MEDC to get better.
Excellent. All right, well,
So there's a community in West Texas called Marfa. Have you ever heard of Marfa? It has become an artist. It used to be a small town. Well, it still is a small town. But the economy was based in cattle, ranching. It's become an artist colony. Property has skyrocketed, and now the locals, it's kind of a strange gentrification. It's so expensive to live there that all the locals have been pushed out. It has become an artist colony that's all it is. It's not even, it doesn't have a healthy balance. What I advocate is that a local community should have balance. I would not take a manufacturer to certain communities in Florida that have no manufacturing tradition. So it's good to have a balance. What I see that happening here. It's good to encourage the arts because that's quality of life. It's very personal what quality of life is. Some people, quality of life is outdoor recreation. For some, it's the arts. For some, it's healthcare. But I encourage the arts. That's a good thing. But it's got to be within balance of a community. I don't think Battle Creek will become a Marfa, but Marfa is kind of a disaster in a way.
excellent. Well, I want to thank our panel in the interest of time. We're going to bring Eric Stewart back up for a few brief remarks, but before I do, I want to remind everyone that there is a survey on your table, so we ask that you all complete that. We do look at that data. It helps us create and craft next year's program. So again, let me have a round of applause for our panelists. And we'll now have Eric Stewart, BCU Board Chair, with some closing remarks. Thank you, sir.
Wow, give these guys a round of applause again, please. I want to first say thank you to all of you for coming and participating this morning. History is so important. I want to thank our panelists for their generosity, for their input, and what they do in our communities and our state. Give them a round of applause again. I told you this morning we were going to be intentional. And before I let you go, I just want to recap a couple of things that stood out to me. The bow tie group is saying, stop whining. Okay? We got to stay in our lanes and rev up the engine and be serious about what we're doing. We're worrying about petty stuff. We know in this community sometimes we get stuck on shenanigans. Those days are over. We need to be working together. We have assets. What I heard here today is a matter of leverage, not person leverage. And we have so many rich assets in this community. I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about talent. I'm talking about people. I'm talking about infrastructure. There are things that I've traveled with Joe that we have here that communities don't have, and it's underutilized. When you leave here today, think about your role and what you're going to do about it. Not what we're waiting for somebody else to do for us. What are we going to do with our talents, our infrastructure, to make a difference for our community, our region, and our state? Thank you for coming. Appreciate your time today. We want to make good use of your time. Was this a good use of your time today? Great. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week.